Hello again, I am Jim Bob and welcome to Seasons in the Valley, a brand new Let's Play for the channel. We are doing the Valley, the Old Farm, and we're using Seasons. And we're also going to go with a New Holland theme on this map, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown of all of our equipment before we actually get straight into the details of Seasons. To start with, all of the existing equipment, all the original starting equipment has been sold, everything, and bought in a whole load of new stuff. So first off, we are using the TC5 590 as our combine, along with the standard header mounted on a trailer, and we also have the corn header as well. We have a couple of trailers. We're using the new Brantner power push trailers. These are a fantastic little mod. Absolutely love these. This one is a covered version with a capacity of around 33,000 litres, and we have a slightly taller open covered version which is around 44,000 litres. Two cracking little trailers, these. Really like these. I'm going to be using this as well. This is the Lizard BD frame. I haven't had a chance to use this yet, but I really like the idea of this, so I thought this would be the great opportunity to actually give it a try. We've got the logging configuration here. We also have a water trailer and a flatbed trailer for anything else that we might want to move, pallets, etc, etc. If we move round back into the main farm, be able to show you everything else that we have. So we have two tractors. We have a New Holland T5 with an uprated engine, so we have about 117 or so horsepower, somewhere in that kind of range. We also have a T7 in the Blue Power paint job, and this has had its engine uprated to 313 horsepower from 288, just because we need that little extra oomph on this map because of the hills. There are some quite steep hills on this map, so that little bit of extra power definitely required. For our T5, which is fitted with a front loader, as you can just see the arm attachment just there, we have a set of front loader arms. These are our modded Stoll front loader arms here, using the Euro release, and these are the old versions, so you can see we've got some rust patches on these. We also have the Biobelts log claw and a bale spike from the CSZ pack. Moving around to here, I open this door up, we have a spraying system. So to fertilise our crops, we'll be using the Kuhn sprayer. We have the rear tank here and also the front tank as well. Just close that door up. Moving swiftly on, over here is where we have our skid steer. But this is the logging variation of the skid steer, whereas this map default provides you with the standard version. I wanted the logging one because we are going to be chopping down a few trees on this farm. And I've also added in a few tools, so you can see we have the turbo saw, the turbo grapple, and then we also have the stump grinder as well. So that's our JCB skid steer setup just there. Oh, and then up there is the bale spike, just resting on that bale just there as well. But wait, there's more. We have more equipment as well. In here we have the gents wood chipper hiding away. Close that off. Down to here, and these are our seeders. So because we've got some quite big sized fields on this map, I'm going to start off with some decent sized seeders. So we have the Horsch Pronto, and we also have the Horsch Maestro, two 9-meter seeders just there. We're also using a jumper plough. This is, I think, 4.8 meters in working width, and we're using the Laborto 6-meter cultivator as well. We won't tend to use that too much because our Pronto will cultivate the fields for us, but if we need to plant something with our row crop, with our Maestro, then obviously we will need to use a cultivator to clean the fields. We also have a New Holland wheel loader, and the tools to go with it just here. We have the smaller of the Holaris forgot what these are called now. Levelers. There we go. The smaller leveler, because this one can be adapted to fit either a 3-point hitch or a wheel loader. Bit odd that it's only the small one that allows us to fit onto a wheel loader and not the large one. You'd have thought it'd be the other way around, but apparently not. And we also have this big lizard bucket here, which holds around about 11,500 litres as well. So a couple of tools there for our wheel loader. Probably won't need to use that for a little while, but if we do a bit of silage work, then obviously we've got two great options for it there, and of course a couple of options for when it snows as well. Moving around up here for the last little bits of our equipment, we are using the New Holland big baler, as I like to call it, the 4,500 litre baler. I haven't had the chance to use this on a Let's Play yet, but I have tested it, and it's really nice baler. And something else I haven't had the chance to use yet is an auto load trailer. So we have the Flegel auto load bale trailer just here as well. So there we go. That's our equipment selection. I've got a nice, decent sized selection of equipment, not too over the top, but a good enough amount to have a good run in this first year. We also have some additional fields as well, so let's take a quick look at the map. So you can see that as well as the usual starting fields of 25, 26, 93 and 2, which we will not be using at least this year, maybe next year, we have two additional fields as well, well, three additional fields as well, sorry. We have field 52, 63 and 83 added to our usual three fields down here, which are 62, 91 and 92. These two fields we're going to combine before we start doing any plough work, and then this is just an extra bit of land for us. Because we're not using these four fields over here for a while, I wanted to add a little bit of extra land down here where we're going to be focusing our sort of play for this calendar year. So, yeah, we're using seasons. Now, I don't know a huge amount about seasons yet. I've had a little bit of a play about with it, and I've done a fair bit of reading about seasons, especially on the Realismus Modding website. There's a fantastic manual about how to use seasons on there, and if you haven't read it, I do highly recommend that you go and do that. I'll pop the link to that manual in the description of the video down below, so you'll be able to check that out, and it might answer some questions that I can't, or that you might have as well. Also, we'll kind of try and explain things as I go along. This isn't going to be a guide to how to do seasons. This is just going to be a standard Let's Play, and we're going to try and figure it out as we go along. As time goes on and I get a lot more comfortable and confident with seasons and gain a lot more knowledge, I will look at putting out some specific guide videos on how to do this, how to do that, how to get the best out of each season, so to speak. But I'm not going to call this a kind of a guide to seasons, because that would be false advertising. This is no way, shape or form going to be a guide to seasons, because it's only been out a very short time on console, and I am in no position to be able to tell people this is what you have to do, because I honestly don't know. I could be making it up as I go along. I probably will be making it up as I go along. So for me to turn around and say this is the right way to do things is potentially a little bit hypocritical, because it might not be the only way to do it. I might be doing stuff wrong. You know, we'll figure that out as we go along, I think is fair to say. So, right, let's try and give you a little bit of info on the seasons. First off, to access seasons, in terms of the seasons menu, if you just press options, then you just pull up your normal menu system as you've seen before. If you hold down L1 and press the options button, you get your season settings. So this is where you get a little intro box that pops up, and it literally is just a small intro box that pops up at the start of every season saying it's spring, it's summer, it's autumn, it's winter, and a brief couple of lines of information. Keys in the help menu. This kind of is something that's probably a little bit more for PC users than us, but it does allow us to actually see some of the controls that pop up in the help menu when we open that up. So you'll see sort of like L1 and circle, L1 and options will open this menu up, L1, R1 and circle will open up the calendar, things like that. There is a temperature scale here. It's default in Fahrenheit. Now you can select Celsius, and while it will change it to Celsius on the 7-day forecast, it will not change it on the next tab, which I'll show you in a second. So I would say until that gets fixed, you're best to just leave it on Fahrenheit, because otherwise it's going to get a little bit confusing. You have a choice of length of your season as well. Each season is broken down into 3 sections. You have the early part of the season, the mid part of the season, and the last part of the season. And they all have to be in multiples of 3. So you can have a 3-day season, in which case early spring, for example, will be 1 day, mid-spring 1 day, late spring 1 day. If you want to do it as a 6-day, then it's 2 days for each of those parts. 9-day seasons will be 3 days, and so on and so forth, and you can go all the way up to a 24-day season. So you've got really, really long seasons if you want, depending on how big your farm is, how big your map is, how many fields you have to work. We're just going to start with 6 days for now. As the farm gets bigger and bigger, we'll probably push it up to 9, and possibly in a couple of years' time, if we're still running, I probably will be, then we'll look at maybe pushing it up to 12, but we'll stick with 6 for now. You have snow mode. You can turn this on or off. So as you can see, snow will fall in cold winters, not all the time. So don't assume that it'll always fall, because sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. It's completely kind of random in that respect. Yeah, there are statistics which are programmed into each version of seasons based around the season forecast and real life weather, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to snow all the time in winter. So you can choose to have snow mode on or off. And if you do have it on, you also have a choice as to how many layers. With normal snow mode, you get multiple layers of snow that will build up, which make it harder to clear, and takes longer to sort of thaw as well. So you can limit it to just a single layer if you want to. I'm just going to leave it on full. And if you do have it on full, you have the option of having snow tracks as well. So when you drive over the snow, you will see it gets compacted a little bit where you're driving. So you'll see little divots popping up in the snow as you're driving through. And again, you can just turn that on or off. And then you have crop moisture. So if your crops get above, I think, 20% moisture, then you can't do any harvesting. Even if the weather is gloriously sunny and your crops are ready to harvest, if the moisture level in that crop is above 20%, and I think it's 20%, then you can't harvest at all. So you have the option of turning this on or off. Nice and straightforward. What you'll find is a late shower that lasts for a few hours can seriously have some major impact on your harvesting if it falls as you're due to harvest. And if you're playing with a very short season length, like 3 days, then it can potentially have catastrophic effects on your ability to actually harvest your crops. So it's something to be wary of. Certain geos, and I'll come to geos in a moment, will mean that it's more likely to rain than others. So it's something to think about whether or not you want to have crop moisture on or off. We're just playing on the standard vanilla version of seasons. We haven't got any additional geos loaded. This is just regular seasons. Right, into the calendar section. So you can see at the top you have spring, then summer, then autumn, then winter, and they're split into those 3 sections: early, mid, and late. And we are on a 6-day season, so you can see that days 1 and 2 are early, 3 and 4 are mid, 5 and 6 are late in that particular season. Now the green bars represent when you can plant, and the yellow bars represent when you can harvest that crop. So as we move down the list, you can see that some of these crops can actually be planted twice. Now if we take wheat, for example, we can plant in spring, and we should be able to harvest depending on when we plant, either at the very end of summer or sometime in autumn. Now, if we plant in autumn, we have to wait all the way through to the following year, so the end of summer into autumn the following year before we can harvest. So You can sometimes get away with planting a little bit early, but it doesn't mean you'll get a harvest pop up at another time of the year. You have those very specific set windows. Some crops, especially depending on whether you've loaded a different geo, have an incredibly small window for planting and an incredibly small window for harvesting. So some crops are also completely disabled depending on your climate that you've loaded in as well. So on the left hand side you'll see there's a temperature in blue, and this is the temperature that you need your ground to be at before you can actually start planting that crop. So if you try and plant too soon, your crops aren't going to germinate, they're not going to grow, and they're not going to, and they're going to die. So you've got to make sure that your soil is the right temperature before you actually start planting. Some crops have a really long planting cycle, so you can see here oilseed radish is now a great crop for seasons. Really useful because you can plant it in a really long window and then you can harvest it in a really big window as well. So what you could do is you could plant a regular crop in spring, you could harvest sort of in the autumn, and then you could immediately plant some oilseed radish, and then hopefully you'll be able to harvest that in the spring before you plant your next crop and gain that extra stage of fertilization. Poplar is another product that you can sort of plant nearly all year round, and you can harvest pretty much all year round. So another great product there. And grass, you can see a very long planting window and quite a long harvesting window, but grass will start dying off in colder weather and can take a while to grow back again. So it's a bit of a strange one, grass. And sugarcane is completely disabled on standard seasons. So you can't plant it, you can't harvest it, it's just not available as a crop. This is your economy, and season completely controls your economy. So everything that you've had before is kind of completely thrown out the window. Seasons dominates how your economy works. So you have set times of the year where crops are going to do better against other months and other seasons where they're going to do very badly. As you can see here with wheat, summer is the absolute worst time to sell it. The absolute best time to sell it is sort of early to mid-winter. Same with barley. Canola, again, pretty strong sort of towards the end of the year. Sunflowers, conversely, are probably at their best in springtime, end of winter, beginning of spring. They have a bit of a bump again going into autumn, and then they fall off massively at the start of winter. Soybeans are very, very good to sell in terms of price around the beginning of summer, and then the rest of the year they're pretty much rubbish, as you can see in comparison. Still a decent price, but rubbish compared to what you can get in the summer. Corn, you can see it dips very strongly in autumn, and it's the same with all the crops. They all have their own different particular windows of when they're best to sell. Wood chips, as you can see, very, very strong in terms of sell price around the winter months. This is because you can use wood chips for fuel, to sell at, say, a biomass heating plant, where it's going to obviously go and help power the heating around people's homes. So very much something that's worth selling around the colder months. And then silage, pretty much universal price all the way across the board. And then you also have price for your individual products. You also have prices for your animals as well, so you can see when's a good month to sell an animal, or a good period of time to sell an animal. The end of autumn is probably the worst possible time to sell pigs. Mid to end of spring is probably the best time, but they're also not too bad going into winter as well. So that's the economy section there. And then we're back to the settings page. So let's take a look, first of all, at the top right hand corner. You can see the little symbol there on the far left of our heads up display, indicating that we're in spring. We have an air temperature of 46 degrees Fahrenheit and a ground temperature of 39 degrees. So it's a little too cold at the moment to plant anything. You see, the minimum temperature we really need is 41 degrees. So hopefully we'll get some better temperatures coming up. Let's take a look. If we hold down L1 and R1, we can pull up, and then press circle, we can pull up our 7-day forecast. So you can see day 2, the second half of early spring, the temperatures are actually going to drop. We're going to have 51 degrees is our air temperature and 36 degrees is our ground temperature, so not great. Wednesday, sort of the start of mid-spring, we're actually going to start hitting those soil temperatures that we're going to need. So 41 degrees for planting in mid-spring, and then day 4, weather's going to be really rainy, so it's going to really moisten the soil, but we're going to get temperatures of 48 degrees for the ground. So if we were to wait until, say, Thursday before we did our planting, we could possibly hold off and go for everything except for soybeans and corn. Everything else we could plant. But if we wait until Wednesday and plant a day earlier, we can plant a lot of other stuff instead. So Friday we'd have to wait till the end section of spring, 53 degrees ground temperature. That would be the perfect day to plant canola. No, it's not canola, sorry. Corn or soybeans. But it's late in the window, which means if we were to plant really, really late, it's actually the start of the window for those two crops. So we could kind of get away with it, but we run the risk of not being able to harvest in time. It's one of those danger crops, soybeans and corn. They're really hard to time, because if you plant that little bit too late, then they won't grow in time for you to actually be able to harvest them. So it'll be an interesting decision as to which crop we want to go with. And then you can see Sunday actually is the first day of summer. So good temperatures, good weather, and so on and so forth. But we are going to be chopping down some trees to get started. And then once we've done that, we're going to be ploughing our fields. And we are also going to be combining some fields as well. So to get those fields combined, we need to get the trees out of the way that are kind of running between the border of those two fields. So we're going to take our JCB. It's really hard to see in this thing in cab mode. It's just grid everywhere. Let's go like this. We're going to be combining fields 92 and 63. So we have a sort of a line of trees that runs all the way down between those two fields, and we need to strip that line of trees out so that we can then plough those two fields together. One of them is a grass field, the other field is just a regular old field, but we're going to repurpose this grass field. We're going to turn it into a crop field. So we've got a few trees here that we'll probably end up taking down at some point. But the biggest thing, first of all, is to make sure that we get rid of the trees between the fields. That's the most important thing that we need to get rid of straight away. So we've got our JCB dropping the saw off. We're going to go back. We're going to go grab our stump grinder, and then we're also going to get our T7 to pull one of our two trailers over. And we'll get our T5 to pull our wood chipper over, and we're going to start grinding these trees up. And we're going to save the wood chips so that we have something to sell in the winter weeks, in the winter months. As you can see, I haven't done the nuggets. That's deliberate. I'm saving the nuggets in case we have an emergency situation. You know, if our crops fail, or we just don't get a very good price. If we run into financial difficulty, or if we want to expand our fields and take on a lot of extra land, then we'll be able to do the nuggets at some point later in the series. So they're there as an emergency backup, really. Let's grab the stump grinder. Let's take this over, and as I say, I'm going to also grab a T7 to pull one of our two trailers, and I'm also going to get the wood chipper brought over with our T5 as well. So I'm going to get everything kind of set up in a position, and then I will pop back once I've done that. Okay, so just bringing our wood chipper into position. Let's see which way the tree's going to fall. Let's back this up just a little bit. Okay, there we go. We have a selection of weights as well. We're using these new Hoyer weights as well. This is the 1500 kilo weight. We also have a 1000 kilo weight and a 2000 kilo weight as well. So a nice little selection of 3 different weights, so that we have something available to us no matter what we're doing. There are also a 2500 kilo weight and a 750 kilo weight as well. So really good selection, 5 different weights in that pack. We're using 3 of them for now. And let's get the trailer in position as well. This is the larger of the 2 trailers. This is the 45,000 litre version. As I say, I've been using these trailers a little bit in sort of testing, and I absolutely love them. They're fantastic. Actually, no, I don't want that to be just there. Let's pull that out of the way to the other side. There we go. Right, so let's see. How many trees do we have to cut down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, just collected a nugget by mistake. We have 8 trees to cut down by the look of it. Possibly more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It looks like 8. Might be a 9th. So let's move the stump grinder out of the way. There we go. And from what I've played so far on Seasons, I have to say I'm absolutely loving this mod. It just adds so much and changes the game so much. You know, just even down to like lighting effects. It gets lighter during different parts of the day. Alright, I've not actually used this before. Do I need to do something? Why won't this cut? What am I missing? Why is this tree saw not cutting this tree down? This is weird. I must be missing something. Why is this refusing to cut this tree? Is it too big? Is it too thick? Is that the problem? If that's the case, I mean, I've got a chainsaw so I can cut them down manually, but it's kind of disappointing. I think maybe these trees are too big. Let's try this smaller one down here. Well, let's say smaller, this thinner trunk. Yeah, so the trunks are too thick. Wonderful. So I've got I bought a saw that only works with a couple of trees. That's wonderful. Right, okay. All right, let's do it manually. Oh, there's the Wopster tool. We'll kind of go over that as we go through the game. The Wopster tool really kind of allows us to get a lot of great information at various different times. I can't see a damn thing because of all these bushes, but why can I not get a cutting ring? Is this tree really that big? I can't cut it down at all. Well, that's weird. I'm not getting a... Oh, there we go. Just got a cut ring. So, had to climb the tree a little bit to actually be able to cut this one down. It's quite a big tree by the look of it. think it's going to fall on my equipment. Nope, just got clear. So let's delimb this thing. I've actually had to increase the size of my HUD as well. I think I was running at 60% as a HUD size. That's what I generally like to run, so that it's nice and small and unobtrusive on the screen. But the numbers of the ground and air temperatures were so small on that, I just couldn't read them unless I was like literally staring right in front of the screen. So I've had to increase my HUD size up to, I think, 70, maybe 80%. I think it's still at 70, just to be able to actually see those numbers, because they were just too small. I couldn't make them out, and if I can't make them out on a 43-inch screen, and you're watching on a mobile, then good luck, kind of job. So I felt obliged to just increase the HUD size ever so slightly. It's still not normal sized. It's still smaller than the default version that it gives us. But I can't get on with a giant HUD. Especially now I've been using a reduced size HUD for such a long time. It takes up too much real estate on the screen. It just looks a little bit naff and silly to me. So yeah, we've cleaned that limb off. Continue cleaning all the foliage here. I love how Seasons changes the trees quite spectacularly as the months go through. I mean, you can see we're right at the beginning of early spring, and we've got very little. Well, we've got no foliage on these trees at all. It's just dead branches, and then little twigs coming off those as well. There's no leaves anywhere. But as the month of spring progresses, we start to get some leaves appear on those sprigs, and then they start to get really, really thick coverage as spring progresses and moves through into summer. And then of course when autumn comes and you get those transitions on the standard sort of deciduous trees to go through into the oranges and the browns. Oh, it's a magical feel. It just looks wonderful. Obviously the conifers, like the fir trees, just stay with those green colours there. But to watch the rest of the shrubbery and the leaves just change colour throughout the year and grow thicker as well, and then start to fade back throughout the end of autumn into winter to this kind of look again, where you just have the dead twigs, and it's wonderful. I love it. It's so nice. It really is. Right, there we go. So that's the first tree cleaned. It's time to start cutting stuff up, and then once it's done, we'll feed it through the chipper. So what I like to do is try and get nice good angles on trees when I cut the branches off. So in case I decide I want to sell something, then it makes it relatively easy to do that. One thing I have found as well with some of these trees is that they can be quite tricky to actually put through the chipper sometimes. They have that weird kind of glitch where there's still something attached to the tree even though there isn't. So you can get a branch like that actually has a huge invisible branch stuck to it somewhere that you just can't see, and it stops it from getting loaded into a trailer. It stops it from going through a wood chipper. Sometimes you have to just chop them up as best you can till you get to the part where it's got that sort of invisible blockage, and then just grind it with a stump grinder to make it disappear. Sometimes that's all you can do. It's not a massively common problem. It's just something that happens every now and again, but I don't think that's a problem with the mod. That is something that has plagued Farming Simulator for as long as I've played it. It was a massive issue on Farming Sim 15 on the PS4, and it was a little bit of a problem earlier on in Farming Sim 17 on the PS4 as well. I mean, it hasn't been a major issue for a while, but having said that, I don't tend to do that much logging, as you know, so it's not really something I tend to cut down that often. When I do, I tend to cut down just good old easy to work with fir trees, so I can use a scorpion, or just something that's nice and easy to load, so I can load lumber and sell the logs. These are a lot harder to work with because the branches are all weird shaped and different sizes and very awkward to work with when it comes to trying to sell them. So generally these trees I just tend to kind of grind up, put them through a chipper, and then save the wood chips and make some money off them that way. Right, let's see if I can get a better angle. Get a little bit closer to the trunk. No, that's about as far as I can get by the look of it. Go. And now I can start to chop these bits up into stuff that will go through that quite nicely. I'm going to try and throw some of these bits on by hand, but I've also got obviously the logging claw on my T5 to help load a few things into the chipper if things become a little bit too tricky. So basically I'm going to start cutting up this into relatively easy to handle pieces. Get a nice big pile up by the chipper, and when I've done that I will come back to you in a little while. Okay, so we have 2 trees cut down. The second tree, again, you can see I had to actually scale it a fair bit to actually cut it down. The trunk was just too thick. I've got a few little, a little piece here that needs to be grabbed. I've got 2 trees worth kind of cut, and we're now getting quite a bit of slowdown in places around that big log pile now. So it's time to start chipping up some of this wood. So you can see we're starting to get some frame rate drops because of the sheer quantity of logs that we've got just piled up like that. So I'm going to start loading up. Oop. The wood chipper. Start throwing in some of these pieces. Try and reduce this frame rate issue by clearing some of this wood away. Let's jump in this, turn on, start chipping, there we go. So it's quite juddery around here. That'll ease as we start processing some of these logs, so I'm not too worried about that. See, it's already getting a little bit easier. It's the same as if you have a lot of pallets or you know, a lot of things in really close succession. Like if you have too many trees all planted really close to each other, that can cause quite a lot of slowdown as well. It's just one of those things. Same with bales. I think if you have way too many bales all stacked right next to each other, it can sometimes cause some frame rate lag as well. So like I say, we're just going to throw bits of wood in. I've got to be careful not to overfill the chipper so that we end up wasting a load of wood chips. We do have a bit of an overflow feature with this particular wood chipper, so it will store 5,000 wood chips inside it if the trailer is full, but it's very easy to lose track of just how much you put through your wood chipper if you're not paying attention, and you can end up hitting your 5,000 buffer limit really quickly, and then everything else that goes through the chipper is just wasted. You don't get the chips for it. So it's always a good idea once you've thrown a handful of logs on like this to just have a quick double check and see where you're up to in the trailer. Refusing to go through yet, so we can pull that out of it. No, doesn't want to come out. Right, let's try doing that. There we go. And what's our fill level looking like? Oh, we've got a fair bit of space left yet. We're okay for now. So we'll throw a few more logs in. And as I say, we're not going to see a benefit in terms of income from these logs for quite some time, because it's not going to be until winter that we look to sell this. So, well, we're kind of just sitting on a stockpile of wood chips until the time comes. So one thing I am thinking of doing is installing, maybe taking out a loan and building a forage and chip silo. So we've got somewhere to store these chips rather than just dumping them in a big pile on the ground. I'll have a think about that. The loan system has changed quite dramatically in Seasons as well. It's no longer the standard up to 300,000. Now I think it is based on how much land and equipment you own. So I remember reading that you can go all the way up to over $1 million in loan money if you meet the right circumstances. If you have enough equity in your land and equipment. But right now I can probably go to about 350, 400,000, maybe even more than that, maybe as much as 500,000 overdrawn if I wanted to. I don't particularly want to, because the interest rates are going to skyrocket, and we're going to pay an absolute fortune in sort of daily interest fees if we have that much money taken out. And of course, we're not going to be making any money for quite some time yet. We've got to get our crops planted. That's going to take place sort of in spring. In summer, we'll be fertilizing those crops, and we won't be harvesting them till autumn. And then we might not even be selling them till the following year. So all that time, we're going to be paying cost for seed, for fertilizer. We're going to be paying maintenance at the end of every day for our equipment, and other costs that we would naturally incur. If we have leased equipment, we're going to have to pay obviously the leasing costs and the hourly leasing rates if we use it for more than an hour at a time. All of those costs are going to just keep mounting up, and any money that we have is just going to keep dwindling away until we reach the point where we have no money left and no money coming in either to sort of counteract that. So we really have to plan ahead quite carefully with future purchases, because we're only going to be making money a couple of times a year. The rest of the time we're just going to be spending it just running the farm. So we really are going to have to be careful. This is one of the reasons why I haven't gone over the top with equipment. We've actually got a fair bit of stuff, but we've only got the 2 tractors, and we are going to work them quite hard. We don't have insane amounts of vehicles and really large combines, because we just don't have a need for them at this stage. Our farm just isn't big enough to support them, either in terms of the work that's required or financially in terms of the amount of money it's going to cost us to run that equipment. It's not a viable option at this stage. So we really, as I say, are going to have to be very careful how we plan our farm going forward. It's going to be getting close. But I do think a forage and chip silo would be quite useful. Let's take a look, see how much they're going to cost. Let's see. Because there's 2. Obviously we've got the new one that went live, which can also hold sugarcane. I mean, it's huge, and it's also very expensive. It's 185,000. It will hold 800,000 litres, but I don't think it's really worth spending that amount of money when the primary reason for all of those would be to maybe hold sugarcane, and we can't do sugarcane on this map, or at least not with this seasonal geo added. We could just get a standard forage and chip silo, and these are much cheaper, as you can see, 25,000, and they will hold 500,000 litres. So actually they're not too bad. We can actually buy one of these outright. So yeah, let's stick it. Let's figure out exactly where I want to stick it. And I'm thinking alongside our bunker is going to be a pretty good place, possibly. Where else could I put it? put it here. What normally lives in that bit there? Just some planks by the look of it. I think here might be a good place. Let's stick it just here. So let's try and get it nice and square if we can with our placeable area. I think that'll do it, I think. There we go. So we have a forage and chips silo. A forage and chips silo. I suppose technically, I suppose we could call it a forest and chips silo. But we're going to go dump these chips in there. We'll go back. We'll continue chipping up that wood. We'll get the bigger bits loaded via the log claw, and we'll continue until we've chopped down the rest of these trees. So I will catch you in just a moment once this trailer has finished unloading. Okay, so all the smaller stuff has been loaded by hand, as you can see. We're now on to kind of moving these bigger bits, the ones that are too heavy, and that's what I brought the T5 over for. It's having a little trouble lining up on this one here. There we go. So, I mean, we could have chopped these up by hand with a chainsaw if we wanted to, but you know, as the trunk starts to get really thick and heavy, that's obviously where the bulk of the wood is, and it also means that we start getting very, very a log that's kind of stuck. So we can get in there with a chainsaw. Log seems to have fallen through the base there. That's a bit of a problem. Oh, that one go through the chipper. It's still too heavy, look. I don't know if I can actually get in there to cut that up anymore. Going to be a problem. Of course, I've just loaded this up with logs that are now too heavy. I might have to reset the chipper. I hope that's not the case. Let me at least go and dump these, and then I'll see if I can figure this out. Okay, so we have a weird floating log just here. There we go, nudges the ground. This one, as you can see, is actually sinking into the ground. It sank into the wood chipper, which made it impossible to actually process through. So I'm just going to get rid of this one. I'm going to get the stump grinder in place. Just remove it entirely. Get the grinder lined up at the right spot. Quite temperamental trying to do this. There we go. Hopefully this will grind away the whole piece. Doesn't seem to want to do it, does it? Interesting. Alright. Looks like I won't be able to grind this piece after all. I just have to be really careful putting it through the chipper. So I'm going to go get the chipper back again. I'm going to continue putting those logs through, grinding them up for wood chips, and then I'm going to start cutting and grinding the rest of those trees, and then I'll catch up to you in a little while. We're just about out of time for this episode here, so we'll split day one into two parts, and we'll continue our logging into the next episode as well. But one thing you can see is we actually have a weather change happening. We have some wet weather coming in, some rain, and you can see how gloomy it's starting to get on screen already. You know, the lighting changes when you're playing on Seasons are incredible. You know, it gets really, really dark. It gets when it gets cloudy, and when it starts to rain, and nighttime as well. It gets really dark really quickly as well, depending on obviously the month that you're in. This is one of those weird little bits of logs that is just not playing ball, so we're just going to grind that out completely. And here comes the rain, and you can see, look how overcast it's got already, and how much darker and how much harder it is to see, simply because the rain has started. This is one of the things that I absolutely love about Seasons, is just how variable the weather is, and how much of an effect visually it can have, where everything just changes so rapidly. You'll go from bright blue sunny skies to really dark and overcast, where you can't really see that well, and it gets really kind of almost like foggy on the screen. It's a really, really nice touch, and it's not the same generic kind of lighting effects that we have in game. It can change quite drastically from day to day. Some days it can be sun coming up at 4 or 5 in the morning. Sometimes it could be 8, 9 in the morning. Again, it depends on the month that you're in. It's just one of those little touches that I really, really like about Seasons. But anyway, as you can see, weather is turning bad. I still have quite a few trees to go, so I'm going to keep ploughing on, soldiering on with these trees, chopping them down and grinding them up, getting all the wood stacked, and then we'll start chipping it a little bit later in the next episode. So thanks for watching. I am JBPG, and we'll be back with some more Seasons in the Valley very soon.